Dave Warner here, halftime of the football. Today I want to talk about equality in the game. Now we hear particularly from Eddie Maguire and other Victorians, about how we have to have a level playing field in football. But the big elephant in the room, the thing that is never discussed, is the fact that every year the grand final is played at the MCG, irrespective of where teams finish on the ladder. This is clearly unfair, clearly wrong. In 2014, 15 and 16, we've had interstate teams finishing on top of Victorian teams, but having to travel to Victoria to play the grand final at the MCG and losing on every occasion. The same could happen this year, for example, with the Adelaide Crows, who are almost invincible in Adelaide, but will be forced to up roots and go and play on the MCG. Now, there's two basic ways to look at this in terms of fairness. One, is it fair, is the moral question. Is it fair that a team that finishes on top should not get a home game? It clearly is not. If you finish on top, you should get the home final. We all know how important a home ground advantage is, especially with the umpiring. Look at last year when the Swans had to play the Western Bulldogs. So the Swans finished first, played the Western Bulldogs 6. What was the free kick count? 20-8. Absolutely murdered. Would the umpires have done that at the SCG? I don't think so. Would the Bulldogs have won at the SCG? Probably not. They only won, they were 6 points in front with 5 or 6 minutes to go. So even though they played very well, I don't think they would have won without that home ground advantage. This year it could be the same thing. Is it going to be fair if the Crows turn up and have to play Melbourne or Richmond, who finish below them, but that's their home ground, or Hawthorn for that matter, who had home ground advantage against both West Coast and the Swans, even though they finished lower on the ladder? The other way to look at it and say that it's not fair is the economic advantage. Why should the government of Victoria get all that money flowing into the coffers of Victoria? What do they put into the game in terms of the grand final? Every year they get guaranteed the biggest sporting event in the country. People from Sydney or from Perth or Brisbane have to save up their pennies and start planning about now as to whether they can afford the inflated air tickets to get down to Melbourne. The accommodation gets inflated, same deal. This is simply not fair. It's time that the AFL pulled its finger out and made the game fair for everybody. Let's have it that either the top team who qualifies gets the grand final in their home state, or that the governments of each state have to actually tender for the right to hold the grand final. Then if Adelaide or Brisbane want to put in $100 million to host the grand final, that money goes into football and is spread throughout all the teams. That, to me, is equality in football. That's a level playing field.